Exercise set 1-4, Identifying Reliable and Unreliable Premises, from Workbook for Arguments, by Morrow and Weston. Alright, the objective of this exercise set is to give you practice recognizing reliable starting points for arguments. A few tips for success. Arguments are both a way to convince others of something and a way to learn new things. A good argument leads you, and or others, from premises that you already accept to conclusions that you, and or they, did not previously accept. To do that, however, arguments need to start from premises that you, or the people that you're interacting with, already accept. Furthermore, when two or more people hold different views on a topic, they can't have a productive discussion unless they start from some kind of common ground. No truer words have been said. Therefore, an important part of learning to give good arguments is learning to recognize which premises are reliable and widely acceptable starting points. Deciding whether a starting point is reliable and acceptable in this way can be tricky and can vary with the situation. This being said, there are some rules of thumb that can guide your thinking. First, widely accepted facts are usually reliable starting points. Usually, and they should be in the better version of the world. For instance, it's widely accepted that there's a wide variety of species on Earth and that these species resemble each other in various ways. Those facts can provide reliable starting points for an argument about evolution. It's worthy finding out how widely accepted your facts really are, though. Sometimes that seems like common knowledge to you might be widely doubted in other social circles, other parts of the country, or other parts of the world. For instance, it's widely accepted in many parts of the world that the variety of species we see today evolved by natural selection, but there are also social circles and parts of the world where that's frequently denied. If you're addressing your argument to someone who denies what you regard as widely accepted fact, you may need to find another starting point for your argument. Second, premises that are supported by appropriate testimony or sources are usually reliable. For instance, if a trustworthy person tells you that she has been to Brazil and seen pink dolphins living in the Amazon River, you could count "there are pink dolphins living in the Amazon River" as a reliable premise, right? Because you trust this person that told you that. There are also guidelines to help you spot unreliable premises. Premises that are widely known to be false or easily shown to be false are unreliable. Again, though, remember that what's widely known to be false in one context may be generally accepted elsewhere. Remember your audience. Other premises are unreliable not because we know they're false, but because we don't know or can't know whether they're true. Claims like this can't provide a solid foundation for an argument. Wild generalizations and overly vague claims fall into this category. So do controversial claims offered without support and claims that we could not possibly verify. Remember, though, that there's a difference between claiming that a premise is unreliable and claiming that it's false. Saying that a premise is unreliable could just mean that you don't know whether it's true. All right, the instructions for this exercise. After I present each example, pause the video and rewrite the following arguments in premise and conclusion form, just like we did in the previous exercise. Then, state whether each premise is reliable and explain why it is or why it isn't. All right, here's the first example, the sample from the book. Computers will soon take over most human tasks. After all, Deep Blue, a computer, beat Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, in 1997. And if computers can defeat the best human alive in an activity that symbolizes intelligence more than any other, then surely their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off. All right, the premises and the conclusion for this argument. Computers will soon take over most human tasks. Deep Blue, a computer, beat Garry Kasparov, the world chess champion, in 1997. And the next premise, if computers can defeat the best human alive in an activity that symbolizes intelligence more than any other, then surely their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off. All right, now remember, the next step from here is to put this into premise conclusion form. We might do this by premise 1. Deep Blue, a computer, beat the world chess champion in 1997. 2. If computers can beat the best human alive in chess, then their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off. Now notice how much this second premise has changed from the way it's presented in the passage, right? And the first premise as well. Both were tightened up significantly when they were moved into premise conclusion form. And the conclusion, so computers will soon take over most human tasks. All right, let's assess these premises. Okay, if we're assessing premise 1, Deep Blue, a computer, beat the world chess champion in 1997, this is reliable, since it's a widely accepted fact that this happened. If the argument were intended for an audience that didn't know about Deep Blue's victory, the author would probably want to point out to the news report about the match as a way to support the premise with a source, right? So in the case where we don't know that this happened, some sort of source proving or showing that it did could also be helpful. All right, premise number 2. If computers can beat the best human alive in chess, then their supremacy in everything else we do is not far off. Let's assess this premise. This premise is pretty unreliable. It's implausible speculation to say that a victory in chess suggests that supremacy in everything else we do is just around the corner. After all, chess is a very different kind of activity from most things that humans do. All right? So that's what it would look like to assess the two premises. Now notice that I'm not asking you to assess the conclusion. That is in part because the conclusion follows from the premises, right? So if the premises are no good, then the conclusion is no good. We don't have to assess the conclusion to come to realize that. All right. Now, move on to number 1 from the book. Anybody could become a zombie. A relative, a friend, or even a neighbor. Zombies are constantly looking to eat the brains of the living. This is why you should always be prepared to escape from or fight back against a zombie attack. All right. Now, remember the process. First, we need to identify the premises in the conclusion in this very interesting argument. Here we go. Premise 1, anybody could become a zombie. Premise 2, zombies are constantly looking to eat the brains of the living. And the conclusion, this is why you should always be prepared to escape from or fight back against a zombie attack. All right, remember the next step. Put this argument in premise conclusion form. All right, the argument in premise conclusion form. Anybody could become a zombie. Zombies are constantly looking to eat the brains of the living. And so the conclusion, so you should always be prepared to escape from or fight back against a zombie attack. All right, let's assess this very curious argument. When we assess premises 1 and 2, premise 1, anybody could become a zombie, and premise 2, zombies are constantly looking to eat the brains of the living, right? The premises of these arguments are unreliable because that's a widely known fact that zombies don't exist. All right, so given that, it is impossible for anybody to become a zombie. And also because zombies don't exist, they are not constantly looking to eat the brains of the living because they don't exist. Example 3, and this will be the last one. Some people scoff at a liberal education as a waste of time. But a true education is not just about accumulating knowledge. It's also about educating one's emotions. A liberal arts education exposes students not only to history, science, and math, but also to the literature and arts that speak more directly to our emotions. Thus, a liberal arts education is an essential part of any real education. Okay, remember where we start. We need to identify the premises in the conclusion. Here we go. The first premise. A true education is not just about accumulating knowledge. It's also about educating one's emotions. And the second premise. A liberal arts education exposes students not only to history, science, and math, but also to literature and art that speaks more directly to the emotions. Now I'm going to call your attention to this premise, and we'll notice that when we get to the point of presenting the argument in premise conclusion form, this is going to be broken down into two premises. But these together lead to the conclusion, A liberal arts education is an essential part of any real education. All right, now let's present this argument in premise-conclusion form. Premise 1. A true education involves accumulating knowledge and educating one's emotions. We'll remember I said premise 2 and 3 break what I had identified as a single premise down. A liberal arts education exposes students to history, science, math, literature, and the arts. Okay. Exposure to literature and the arts speaks directly to our emotions. And the conclusion, so a liberal arts education is an essential part of any real education. All right, so let's assess these premises. So generally speaking, premises 2 and 3 are reliable because they're widely accepted facts. So a liberal arts education does expose students to history, science, math, literature, and the arts. And exposure to literature and the arts speaks directly to our emotions. Yeah, I guess we will just accept these as widely accepted facts. However, premise 1 is unreliable because the use of a vague expression, true education, makes it hard to tell what is even going on with the premise, whether it's true or not. What counts as a true education? How can we know when we've achieved this? At the very least, we need to see an argument for the claim that a true education involves accumulating knowledge and educating the emotions. So notice we had that argument, maybe we'd be okay. But we don't, and so therefore, premise 1 is not very good.